All right, let's deliberate on this further with Safer South Africa Foundation CEO Riah Phiyega and independent crime analyst and researcher Thabang Bokgopa. Let me thank you both for your time. Good afternoon. I'll start with you, Ms. Phiyega. The minister saying, and I quote, "These numbers tell a sobering story reflecting the severity of the challenges we face. These numbers represent more than just the figures on a page. They reflect the lived realities of our citizens, their fears, their losses, and their hopes for a safer tomorrow." Your take?
I absolutely agree. Good afternoon to you, Bongiwe, and to all the viewers and to my fellow panelists. I absolutely agree with the minister. These numbers that he is reading out are sobering. And it is time for us as a nation to actually realize that the concern that he raises doesn't just sit with the police. It should sit in each and every house in this country. And the safety of this country does not only lie with the law enforcement entities, it lies with each and every one of us. I've heard him talking about crime intelligence. The best intelligence any nation shall ever have is in the community itself, because these criminals that we're talking about, and it's my husband, it's my mother, it's my father, and all that.
And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, because also the safety of some of these whistleblowers also becomes under scrutiny. But before we get into that, let me bring in Thabang into this conversation. Thabang, we're seeing, of course, when it comes to contact crimes, murder is also, of course, has gone slightly down, according to what the minister has to say when you look at the figures. And I do hope we put up the graphic now, that when you look at murder, for example, in Q1 of 2021, there's around 5,716. Q1 of 2022, we're talking 6,424. Q1 of 2023, 6,228. And now, Q1 of 2024, we are at 6,198. This, of course, as some have been saying, the numbers seem to be going down somewhat, but not, at an accelerated pace as others would expect. What are you reading into this?
Good evening, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Yeah, thank you so much. And indeed, we see a slight decline in the murder rates. However, from a research perspective, it is worth noting that there is an unclear distinction between attempted murder, assault with grievous bodily harm, and murder. And I'm saying this because we are only reporting on the reported cases, meaning that a case could be reported as attempted murder today, and the victim passes away tonight or tomorrow. That case will not be reported in the stats as a murder, but it will be reported as attempted murder or assault GBH. So, and if you check in the introduction of the statistics, they are showing that they are still working with Stats SA to officiate the crime statistics. So this will tell you that when you go to conduct real research, you may find out that the actual murders that have occurred in this quarter are way above what is being reported. And that is some of the challenges, because we are only reporting on what is being reported at first time when the case is registered. And the case may change as time goes. Yeah. From the case, it may be assault with grievous bodily harm, attempted murder, and later we realize that this was actually a murder case.
So Thabang, given that particular concern you're raising, then there's a possibility that the data may not be as accurate as we are hoping for it to be. And this has been a concern over the years. Apart from reporting on a matter in the manner in which you've described, where are some of the loopholes, would you say, when it comes to data collection?
Thank you so much. The actual verification of the statistics at station level, I think the South African Police Service should invest more in that. Phiyega would know that. You'd find that certain stations are more committed to actually lowering the stats. That's when you find that certain cases are not reported through reflection of what happened. It's only at a court level whereby a court convicts someone of murder, but at the station level, when you checked against the cast number, it is still saying assault GBH. And secondly, because the stats are reporting only the crime reported, not the convictions, it will only be corrected when they capture the conviction. So SABC should invest more in terms of making sure that there is accurate data collection from station level. There's a unit, a sub-unit called MIC there. The MIC unit there should be capacitated as well with skilled people who will make sure that the data is collected directly and accurately as fair as possible.
Ms. Phiyega, I'm not asking you to rule from the grave, but you've been in the fold and you're hearing about this data that is, I see Thabang is laughing because he knows exactly where I'm going, but you see how this data has been collected over time. He's raising some compelling arguments, and I wonder, as somebody who's been in the system before, would you agree that there are some flaws?
I do agree with Thabang, and I think it's not only a SABC matter. I think he's raising an issue that talks to integrated reporting. Already in the statement that he has told you is that there is the long tail of this reporting. That assault GBH, when it goes to hospital and there is a death that results from that, there is also a role that is played by the institutions other than just the police, because he's right. The data that is collected as source should be tracked because it's going to land in court. So I think the whole issue of integrated reporting becomes very important. Some years ago, we had conversations with Stats SA because we were actually asking ourselves the question, is this statistical data and collection, as well as the verification and validification of it, just a SABC matter? And that's where, broadened statistical collection of institutions such as Stats SA become another important element. And that is why I'm saying what Thabang is raising is whether indeed in future we as a country shouldn't be looking at integrated data collection and collation as well as analysis. He's quite right. I agree with him.
You were talking about something critical that, crime fighting is not only a function of the SAPS. Communities at a broader level need to come forward. But in some instances, it's difficult for some of the whistleblowers to come forward because they're simply, in some cases, not protected. So how do we begin to even break that barrier?
Let me start off by saying the issue you're raising is very important. Today, we are gathered here and talking about crime stats that have been reported by the minister. The way we are geared and how we are structured as a country, we are investing a lot of resources in reactive policing, where people have to have committed crime so that the system gets on to work. There is another big area called social crime prevention, which we also as an NGO play in. Our future lies also in our ability to educate our young, who are our future, around issues of crime, to create better relations between communities and the law enforcement agencies. These children are not born criminals. They are inducted into criminality. So we who are upright and straight thinking, society members must also invest in educating them. Longitudinally, down the line, we're going to start seeing adults who are more crime averse, who are more aware that crime does not pay. So that's one of the areas that we need to look into. Protection of the whistleblowers. It's another important area because these people take a huge risk. They stick out their necks to say, we want to be nation builders. We want to inform those who are responsible for protecting us and give them information. That's where the community intelligence that I was talking about earlier comes in. But if we don't create an environment that protects them, then we are destroying the very source of intelligence that is pure and clean and close to the source. So it's important for us to look into that and say, how is the entire law enforcement system collating their resources, because NPA has that, DPCI has that, SABS has, resources to protect these whistleblowers. They must work together, collate their resources, and make sure that they can get those resources working more for them.
Yeah, and Thabang, as a final question then, segueing into that, firearms are still a huge concern. They are the most common used instrument in committing these murders. And there's a lot that's being said about illicit firearms that are out there and how many firearms are in the hands of the criminals. But what will it take to rid the streets of these firearms that are committing these acts?
Yeah, indeed, if you go and check the Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063, which is themed silencing the firearms in Africa, it would be important that one of the innovative solutions would be for SABS to compensate people for handing in firearms, unfortunately. That's the first one. However, we need more dedicated units, because if you look at the DPO, dedicated police officials at your local police stations, and the skill subset that they purport to deal with Firearm Control Act, it is insufficient. You'll understand Section 105 of the Firearm Controls Act demands and requires that the SAPS should, on an annual basis, inspect all people who have access to firearms to ensure that they are still utilizing the firearms within the ambience of the law. The firearm is still controlled within the ambience of the law. And also, we need to empower more of our borders, because that's where we get more influx of illegal firearms into the country. If there could be more dedicated units at our borders to ensure that all those who are apprehended for possession of firearms are dealt with swiftly, I think there we would get a very good success.
All right, it sounds like I get this feeling that we have not even begun to scratch the surface when it comes to this particular conversation and some of the areas that need addressing. But thank you so much for getting us started. Do appreciate your time. That was Safer SA Foundation CEO Riah Phiyega and independent crime analyst and researcher Thabang Bogopa. Of course, on that note then, let's check in with how things are looking on the weather.